dropped the K-Rod this guy.
Yeah.
K-Rod.
Let's give Moray another dynamic hand. Giving us a nice understanding on what covenants are. The difference between actually the covenant and the book of the covenant and the book of the law. Are there any questions at all? Any questions? Questions? So everybody's good?
I got a question.
Sure.
Like, just say when you read the scriptures where it says, like what you just said, you get cut off from your people. Is that the same thing as being put to death? It's being cut off.
Oh wow, yeah, being cut off. Whew. That definition could be broad, but yeah, I mean, to be separated, to be killed, excommunicated, destroyed,
Right, so just say if they were cut off from their people, they had to leave, like the gates of Israel, like they had to leave.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it can even get more drastic than that, but you can just go through your windshield. Yeah, I mean, to death. Yeah, because again, there's no more blood, like what we had brought out when we went into the book of Brit, the 10th chapter after the Mashiyach had died. And he's now that atoning sacrifice for the nation of Yashra'al. There is no more atonement for sins. That's it. It's a wrap. So we want to make sure that we fully understand Torah, understand the covenants, because we have, again, a festival coming up. The Pesach is so important, and it's about not having, again, leaven in our lives. And if there's any jealousy, hatred, any of those things with inside of us, there's going to be a very big problem, a major problem. Because, again, we're not supposed to be participating in these festivals with leaven inside of our houses here. We're talking about, again, the bodies. And but a lot of people are into, again, the works of the law, meaning now, again, they would rather run home and clean out their toasters, their microwave ovens, their vacuum cleaners, and not look on the house. I'm talking about this leaven here. If you come to my house and I have a loaf of bread in my refrigerator or on the countertop, that has nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with the leaven that's inside of you. Because the leaven is supposed to be something that you're supposed to now have out of your life from this point forward. Because with the 7 days of unleavened bread, that's just a temporary work. Because after the 7th day, you can now bring the bread back into your house. But we don't want to bring the bread back into our spiritual, this physical house here. So this is the reason why Moray is bringing out now the importance now of the book of the covenant. We're good.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had their hand up on Moray?
Oh,
Yes.
So are we to get physical leaven out of our abode or where we live, or are you saying that's just symbolic and not really important?
If a person wanted to, say for example, like commemorate or look at what we actually did, I don't have a problem with that. As long as a person understands that the leaven that the scriptures is talking about, because scripture says that when we look at the scriptures, the Mashiyach is talking to his Talmudim, all of this was written of him. The Mashiyach now was that atoning sacrifice. There was no leaven inside of him. So we want to make sure that we don't trample again on the blood of the Mashiyach, because that was only a prophetic shadow picture. So now that the Mashiyach is here, or he died for us, we are no longer under the schoolmaster. So the works of the law, where we're talking about putting the blood on the doorposts and all that stuff like that in our physical houses, is now supposed to be on, it was on the physical where you abode at. It's now this house here. This is the reason why a lot of us might, we wear the fringes, we wear the mezuzahs and things like that around our necks, because it's a reminder now that we understand that it's about this house. So that's what the whole walk is about.
Right.
for example, these covenants are so important. The hardest thing that I'm finding for our people to do is forgive. That is the hardest thing in the world.
Because I forget about my right now. Like right now. So is it that we forgive like the people in here, or like Israel by extension, or like everybody?
No, we're supposed to be, like Maurice said, we're the light of the world. And so we want to show this example to the whole world that we are a forgiving people. Now, I'm not saying, to be treated like a doormat. That's not what I'm saying. When we talk about forgiveness of sins, now we have to understand what is it that the Mashiyach came to do. All right? He was not just that atoning sacrifice, but I wanted to bring up another word here now. It's the Hebrew word machah, which is a little bit more different than the word kafar, which means to cover. But we talk about first, let charity start at home. We should all be in one accord here. All right, so the problem is here amongst us. It's amongst the brothers and sisters in the congregation. It's about the Ish and the Ishas, brothers against brothers, sisters against sisters. The problem is that it's in the house.
Okay, so you're not talking about outside.
Oh, them too. Well, when I'm saying charity begins at home, is what I'm talking about. Remember how the Mashiyach, how he worked with the Talmudim at home first. Once he was finished working with his disciples, then he sends them now out into the world.
Yeah.
So,
but that wouldn't that deal to Israel?
yes, absolutely. But Israel is not supposed to be a light into the. Put it this way: even when we talk about home, we are still talking about the 12 tribes that are scattered abroad. But in this immediate assembly here, what I'm talking about here is that the love, the charity, and the forgiveness is supposed to start here. So when I go out into the streets now, I'm still supposed to have that light inside of me. The other nations, for example, are you talking about, are we supposed to forgive the other nations?
Yeah.
Oh, Scripture is very explicit, okay, where it talks about the cup that she has filled into you is going to be filled double into her. So the Scripture talk about recompense or paying back. But the object of following Torah now is that where we come from is that, I can't take that vengeance upon myself.
Right.
So, right, but again, the whole goal now is to walk peacefully with all mankind. This is the goal.
I mean,
Yes.
Because I was going to say, because I think there's a scripture that says, do good unto all men, but especially those that are of the house of the faith.
Exactly.
So,
Because there will be other nations out. When all this is done, there will be other nations. But they have to now also come under Torah. They're going to have to also follow the law, statutes, and commandments as it tells in the book of Ezekiel.
Right. So there are people that are outside of the body that are still Israel. So, and then further out than that, it's just straight non-Israel. You see what I'm saying? Like, so, obviously it starts here because this is us personally.
Right.
Then the next level will be other Israelites. Then you have Israelites that don't know that they're Israelites. And then you have them other people.
The other nations.
So, I'll start.
Yeah. Are you getting out? Is there salvation for the other nations?
No. But I guess, because, it says, like, forgive those that.
The trespass against you, yeah, and even the Father's Prayer. Even when you go to the book of
Yeah,
Matthew.
that turn the other cheek thing, like all that, like, isn't that for us? Like,
When you go to the book of Matthew the 6th chapter, we've given the prayers. We talk about the forgiveness of the sins, but it first starts amongst Israel. That's the whole thing. But if I'm reading you correctly, our mothers and our fathers who might not be in the law, and then those, like you said, that are way out there, I guess, that are just real ignorant to the law.
to Gentiles. Because, like, my dad, he's not here anymore, but he wasn't, my mom she's here, but she's not physically here, she's at work.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad was not here. He was in Christianity, or whatever. So, he said, like, I would forgive him because he's still the people, but somebody like vengeance. And like, that's not the counterbalance to what I'm saying. I'm not saying do something to a person.
Right.
Like, that's not the opposite of what I'm saying. Like, it's like, what do you do in terms of them, like as far as forgiving them or whatever, for, you know, the condition? Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying go out and do anything to them, because we know obviously that's for the Father to do and all of that.
Once you're in this walk here, and we begin to look at how the Mashiyach operated in the ministry, you come to a non-believer. You have this light. And so what you're trying to do now is to bring this non-believer into the light. There's going to be times and points now where you're going to just have to like dust the dust off your feet and just keep it moving. Because to continuously now try to forgiving, I mean, if you, for example, if there's an Israelite that keeps robbing my house every single day, I mean, do I just keep forgiving him? Absolutely not. What would be the purpose of that? Because we have to also be able to understand disagreeable spirits too now, because we know that this person is actually acting on behalf of the adversary. So the Father did give us that ability now of discernment. Now you should know now, once you're well seasoned in the walk, just like the Mashiyach had to do, he had to turn his back. But we do find something very important that the Mashiyach said when he was up on the tree. When he's, right before he gave up the Ruach, he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." So we see now that this forgiveness now has more to do with what the Mashiyach did now, which was the shedding of his blood. So we see now that this act of repentance is given. What we're doing now is sharing forth with the non-believers and those who are repetitive with their offenses. Even in today's society, if a person's not repetitive now with their sins or their crimes now, they're going back and forth to jail. I mean, it's like a revolving door to them.
But so forgive them. Who is the them?
The them would be the person. Now, if you came across a person.
No. In that specific example, when Mashiyach said that, who was the them?
It was always about Israel.
Okay.
Yeah, it was always. I mean, this is what we've been doing like from day one. The Mashiachs.
Because you see how that could be, because it could be the Romans.
Reading.
Oh, my bad.
Reading the scriptures when the Mashiyach is saying, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." But remember now, when we read the story, the way that it's written, the Romans, they washed their hands of the situation because they said, "Listen, we have nothing to do with this situation here. You judge him according to your law." And then now, what was important with that whole situation now, there was two Mashiachs. Remember now, there was Yahusha the Mashiyach, and there was the son of Barnabas, right? And the word, we talk about, so the son of the Father. That's Barabbas is now the son of the Father. So what we find very interesting here with that case there, I don't want to go too far with this now. You don't remember, they said, who would you rather go?
He said
Barabbas. Barabbas, means is the son, Bar, Jesus, son of the Barabbas, Abbas, son of the Father. And then you have the Mashiyach, and they said, no, let go Barabbas. And then when the conversation went further on, Israel said, let the sins be honest. So we do have that happening now. But the point that I'm trying to make now is that the Romans said, listen, you know what, we have nothing to do with this situation. What the Romans were actually doing now is that this was a political party. We have now the Yahudims now, these Pharisees here now, that's a religious party. So we have a legal party, and we have a religious party. So the religious party, which were the Pharisees now, they said, listen, you know what, let the blood of the Mashiyach be on us and our children. So we had this happening today, but they let Barnabas go. Barnabas now was a revolutionist or revolutionary, along with the Sakari, the Sons of Thunder. These guys now were doing the uprisings in Jerusalem. And so that's the reason why when we look at the engravings, it said Yahusha, king of the Yahudims. And they had it written now, it was in 4 different languages. And so now the Mashiach's crucifixion had to do with Because the only way that they can crucify him now would be through an act of coming against the government, because there can only be one king.
So coming against who?
Remember now, the Pharisees said, listen, if you don't execute judgment on the Mashiyach, you are no friend of Caesar. So so we now have the Romans now didn't want any problems with Caesar. So now it's like the tombstone or the engravings now is that, listen, you know what? Yahusha Mashiyach, king of the Yahudim, the Mashiyach. So what I'm trying to share here now is that, with your question, was they talking about the Romans? No, this was talking about Israel. It was always about Israel. From Genesis to Revelation, this is all about Israel.
Cool.
It tells you what in Matthew 1:21, he's come to his people. So it was always about his people. Zechariah said, listen, you know what? He didn't want to die until he seen the salvation of Israel and he saw actually the Mashiyach.
I think what he was saying is now, that's going to be my same question.
Mm-hmm.
I think what he is saying is, do we have to forgive those that have been oppressing us, like talking as those that brought us over to this land, those people, not of our own people. But he's saying of our oppressors, like those people.
Right now.
Yeah. Them. The ones that's messing up our water and stuff. Like them.
So you're talking about the elites, because those are the ones that's doing it.
Yeah, like, but you know.
That's
All in that.
Yeah. I mean, trying to say what I'm saying.
Checking you out.
Right. This is the reason why I talked about recompense is the Mashiyach who treadeth the winepress alone. And so if the Mashiyach has enemies, let's just read it. Let's go to the book of, I think it's the book of Matthew. I'm going to find something. I found it very, very interesting. Let's let the scripture start here. The book of, I think it's the book of Matthew. The book of John. Give me 1 second here. Okay, actually it's in the book of Luke, Lucas chapter 1, verse 68. Let's start there. It says, blessed or Baruch be Yahuah Elohim of Yashra'al. For he has visited, and the word visited is redeem or redemption, his people. He hath raised up a horn that represents strength of salvation for us. That's personal. In the house of his servant Yahuah David. As he spoke by the mouth of his set-apart prophets, which have been since the whole world or the world began, that we should be saved or delivered from our enemies and from the hand of all that hate us. If the Mashiyach has enemies, and he's calling them enemies, then I'm calling them enemies. So those that are poisoning the water, absolutely. Those are the adversaries. It tells us in the book of Bereshit, the 3rd chapter, the 15th verse, it said that there was going to be enmity now, or hatred between the two seeds. We see now, it just goes on and on. So prayerfully that answers your question. So Mashiyach talked about us having enemies. So and he has enemies. So if he has enemies, I have enemies. Cool. So that's where we at with that. But I just wanted to share though how important it is for us to understand the importance of the festivals, and forgiveness is one of the key things that's kind of hard for us to do. If we can't forgive one another, listen, there's no way in the world that the Father is going to forgive you. And so forgiveness is very important. And when we look at forgiveness inside of the house now, there's a lot of times that we might do things and it's just by accident. And so a lot of times we might have to just come to one another and say, listen, you know what, is there anything that I might have done to offend you? Because I might have offended you and didn't realize that I offended you, give me the opportunity to apologize to you. And that's what the whole thing is about. Watch this, the book of Genesis, the 17th chapter. Then we're going to let it go, Nishvaka. But this is the first day of spring. I mean, the first, actually, lesson of the new year.
What chapter?
17, verse 10. It says, "This is my covenant," like Morey had brought out. "This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you," so this is personal, "and your seed after you. Every man child among you shall be circumcised." So that is very, very important. The circumcision is the actual sign of a covenant. So the question then becomes, if the Father now made a covenant with Abraham through the cutting of his foreskin, how did the Father now make the covenant with the Isha? Because this was asked. If the Father made a covenant with Abraham, and we do see that Sarah's name was changed, how is Sarah now under the covenant? Because she is now called the daughter or the mother of all nations now. Because we're not saying that our Ishas are not under the covenant, are we? See, these little things here now is going to be very important, because a lot of times, because there's a lot of women groups out here. I don't know if y'all see this now on YouTube. Boy. And it is causing a whole lot of division, because now there's a lot of different teachings. Out of all of the women groups that I've been watching, not one of them is talking about the Mashiyach. I have not found one. And so what I'm finding now is that there's even teachings amongst these women groups where the woman can actually now ask her ish for a separation and a bill of divorce. She can do all these things. And so the only thing that I'm just trying to do is see and make sure that we put structure back into the covenant again. This is how the woman was able to now come into covenant agreement with her ish. And again, every time the ish has intercourse, and I'm just, the way that the scriptures is, that's a covenant. It's an agreement. And so now when Abram is having intercourse with his Isha with the foreskin off of his penis, I talked about this so many times before, now it's a covenant. Her name is now changed. Prior to that, remember, when he had intercourse with Hagar, Ishmael is not a covenant child. It's not. And so when every time the man has intercourse with his Isha and she brings forth children, those children now are coming from the loins of Abraham. Those are covenant children. So it's very, very important, extremely important, that our women understand that they are part of the laws, statutes, commandments. They are obligated now to follow the covenant, and you cannot, according to Torah, you cannot, as long as your ish is following Torah, you can't do the things that I'm hearing some of these women are doing on YouTube and Facebook, because they're not understanding how covenants are actually made. And we're going to get a little bit more into this. But again, we have the Genesis, the 15th chapter. We have a smoking furnace going between the pieces. Abram did not go between the pieces. We have something very, very interesting that Maria spoke about last week, and I said it, then I stopped. Again, Abraham takes Isaac to the top of a mount, a very particular mount, and we can go into that later. He was asked to sacrifice Isaac, his only begotten son. But remember now, this is a covenant of faith. And we have now something happening now where we're about to see a work. A work. But the covenant now was of faith. He's taken Isaac for him to be an atoning sacrifice, or to be a sacrifice. What would have happened if Abraham had walked between the pieces? Exactly. So again, it is very important that we understand, and see, Abraham was so faithful. If Abraham was disobedient, Ishmael's life would have been required. Just to show you now that it's always about obedience from the very beginning. It was always about obedience. Just like a Coty here in the back, we had spoke over a couple of days ago, that she wanted to know what were we about. We had talked a little bit about the Mashiyach. Without this mediator, we're done. We are done without this mediator. And this, because that's all I wanted to, Isaiah 43:25, cheap as I came, and then I promise that'll be it. It's just that I just found today's lesson so important, and I want our sisters to know, really know what this whole walk is about. You are under the covenant. How did you come under covenant? Because there are certain cultures where they teach now a circumcision for women. Mm-hmm. They do that. So you heard of that practice that they do. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we don't get involved in that. We can talk about that a little bit later. I don't want to hurt nobody's stomach, with that thing there. But if you get that cheap as I came to do 43 and 25 in the book of, I think that's Jeremiah?
No, Yashra'al or Isaiah 43 and 25.
Let me see if that's the one that's in Jeremiah. What does Isaiah 43:25 say?
I, even I, am he that blotted out your transgressions.
Right.
For mine own sake, and will not remember your sins. Put me in remembrance. Let us plead together. Declare, thou mayest be justified.
Right. Hallelujah. Moray have brought out the word kafar, which means to cover. Look up that word blot out and see what definition you get. If anybody has that. You're talking about the difference now between a covering and the word mahar.
Yeah, mahar.
Where do you have that?
Properly to stroke or rub, by implication, to erase.
Erase.
Also to smooth, as if with oil that is grease.
And this oil now, we know oil is used now for anointing, and we are going to be anointed again.
Right.
Read on.
As if with oil that is grease or make fat. Also to touch, that is to reach, to abolish.
To abolish.
Blot out.
Blot out. We're not talking about covering anymore.
Destroy.
Destroy. Because just like Maury had brought out, the priest now would have to make an atonement for himself, the rest of the priests, the whole nation of Israel. Then he can now actually go into the set apart place. He had to do all of these rituals, all of these works. But now the Mashiyach now, he didn't have to do all of that. So when the Mashiyach now is this atoning sacrifice for the nation of Yashra'al, he's blotting it out. He would no longer remember, the Hebrew word zakar, would no longer remember our sins. But what was going on with the Levitical priesthood was only a temporary band-aid. Every single year they had to keep doing the same thing over and over again, and it brought nothing into perfection. Nothing. With that, I'm going to say shalom, Mr. Nikar. It was always a pleasure. It was just that, again, Maureen did a dynamic job on this here, and our women are so important. We don't want to see our women defile themselves by being with people from another nation. You're part of the covenant, and you have a job to do. And I respect each and every woman, sister inside the congregation here. And I just can't say enough. We have some beautiful sisters here, and just keep on doing the Father's work. Everything is good. All right, so we're going to stand up and face the east. I'm going to blow the shofar. Okay, 7 times, and we're going to have our chief Zakein to end us with prayer. No, we want to do the announcements live.
Oh,
Oh, you already cut it off?
I'm still running.
You're still right?
Yeah.
So we want to make the announcements so that nobody is missed, or if they're watching online.
Only announcements is next week is Pesach.
Hallelujah.
So whoever didn't, that's it. Shia.
That's it. It's a wrap.
Everybody,
It's a wrap.
Get your garments and meet Yahuah on
Okay.
the
Were we
4th.
able to do the added?
No,
You're not gonna do.
no, I sent you a text message.
Oh, you did. Oh, okay. No, you said whoops. You didn't pay your bill.
No, so that was your wife is sitting down.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so we both show for our 7 times, Mr. Ricard.
Father Yahuah, we thank you for this set-apart day. We thank you for the gathering. We ask you to continue to bless us as a mishpachah. We ask you to bless those that could not be able to make it today. We ask you to bless the food that we're about to receive. We ask you to give understanding of the lesson that you've greatly given More Eliyahu, that we get understanding in your truth and righteousness. Father Yahuah, we pray and ask all these things in your Son, Mashiyach, Yahusha. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.